Welcome back to Phone Lookout. Thanks for watching our videos. To all our subscribers, thank you for subscribing. And if you're new on the channel, please do subscribe, share our videos, and click on like. Now, today's video is a teardown video of the Redmi Note 7. Before you watch this video, I recommend that you watch the previous video because this is just a continuation. And the previous video is about the review of the Xiaomi Redmi Note 7 and the beginning part of how you can get into this phone, how you can open it. So watch the previous video to the end and then you can proceed with this one with much ease. I will leave a card to it in the top right corner right there, and I will place a link in the description section below this video. So click on it, watch it. So let's continue.
Yeah, so I think you can now see that the back plastic of back glass is now gaping, and I can now get between it and the main frame of the phone. So as it is gaping up, you can see right there, I will sneak in some more liquid right there. Okay, some liquid there, and then also this side. I was always skeptic about these suction tubes, but they actually seem to perform. I only until recently acquired it when I bought a screen for my Huawei P9 that I had to replace. So I had it shipped in from China as opposed to buying the screens locally, and so they were kind enough to send me a few tools that I would need in replacing the screen, and that's how I ended up with this little silicone based suction device. And just like that, this peels off. But before you go any further, always be careful. There is a fingerprint fiber that you will have to first unplug from the frame before you entirely lift off the back glass, and that could wreak havoc. You could tear that ribbon and end up with a dead phone, and yeah, that's not good for you, the technician and the client alike. So when you look at the back where the fingerprint hardware, the sensor is, there's this black piece of metal. You simply turn it outward and then pull this fiber downward, and that's that. So now notice that this top side is still held down by glue. I'll still use this solvent to weaken that glue like that, and that lifts off. So just like that, the back glass or back perspex is out, and that's your fingerprint sensor. So if you have any problem with your fingerprint hardware, that's the culprit. You may have to change that. Let me put this to the side. So since this video is going to act as a mini teardown video, now I need to pick my suction thing from this thing, so I'm going to use a surgical blade to get in between it and introduce air, and just like that I have my suction device out of the picture. So this is how the phone looks like after removing the outermost plastic or glass or perspex. So from here, if we were interested in the charging system, we will have to unscrew this lower segment and this screw, that screw. It will help you gain access to the lower board. Let me get my screwdriver and start opening it. Okay, and now that our screwdriver is ready, let me try to zoom out a little. Okay, so right now I'm going to virtually open this phone entirely because I need to figure out why it blacked out. But at this point we are still tearing it down. So to remove the lower subboard, we have to get rid of these lower screws. So the first is out. Let me first close my liquid. It's evaporating. Okay, we're back now that I've secured my liquid. So we are remaining with the Now another 5 screws. 3 out, 4 out. Actually 6 screws were remaining, not 5. 5th one out, 6, 1 out. The 7th is out. And now to pick up this top plastic, there's also this, which is usually the warranty screw, and this gives me hope that this phone hasn't yet been opened, and I'm going to be the first person to open it. For you to open that screw, you have to definitely perforate it, and it has MI on it, I think, to mean me, and then the upper one too. So let me perforate it, and just like that, the warranty is now void. So if you've ever wondered how the retail shop gets to know that the phone was tampered with and therefore your warranty is void, that's the reason, if you have opened your phone before. Now I want you to note something. This adhesive so spilled all over here, but we have to lift out this plastic, so we'll have to use a little more force from the side where the adhesive is. Now this lower plastic houses the speaker and the void that makes it act like a subwoofer, and that's that. And then it also has the vibrator right here. If your phone no longer vibrates, there's a likelihood this is the problem. And of course its contact points are this positive or negative, so you can always take a reading on here and see if you get a resistance value to show that the coils are continuous, but that's your vibrator. And that's it for this lower plastic. So if you need to replace your speaker and vibrator, they are bound onto the lowermost piece of plastic. Okay, now we can put that aside. Let me push this glass. Now there's also one thing to note. Every time you're going to work on the motherboard, before you open any further, you should first disconnect the battery. So this part that we are going to of the teardown would show you how you would replace your battery should there be a need. Now this right here is your battery, that black block that you see right here, and it's a 3900 milliampere battery, which is quite decent, of course rounded off to 4000. And this black thing that you see is the ribbon that transmits power from the battery's subboard onto the main motherboard. So to be able to free that, we'll have to unscrew this screw and that screw. That screw also restrains the fiber that sends signal from the main board to the lower subboard. So let's open these two screws. The first is out, the second is out. As a matter of fact, there are actually 3 screws. This one right here, and then that and that. They are actually 3, not 2. So it also plays the role of holding down this coaxial cable that transmits network signals from the main board to the lower subboard. And often it's the case when your phone was opened and ceases to have network, chances are this coaxial cable is no longer functional or hasn't been plugged into the phone. Now to remove the battery, of course, first unplug it from the socket. Now this battery is under these ribbon fibers, so it goes without saying that you will have to also disconnect the ribbon fiber. So that is out. That's the main fiber. Then this that you see right here, this is seemingly the fiber that goes into the screen. So if your screen were dead, this is what you would deal with. Open that screw to release it from the socket, and just like most of the phones, the screen is held down by adhesive onto the frame. So you'll simply hit the screen and suck it out to be able to separate it from the frame. The screen being glass, you can use heat, but if you are salvaging a screen from a function or other frame, then make sure the temperature does not exceed 100 degrees Celsius, otherwise it will bleach the color dots, the liquid crystal, and you will have less deep colors. Now that we have said that, let's open this metallic restraint that restrains down the fiber that goes into the LCD touch combination into place on the motherboard. So pick that out like that. Most people tend to lose the things, but they are important, because if you put the phone back without this, in the event that it should fall, this could easily jump out of the socket. So that's why they use this, to just give it some extra level of restraint and strength. So I'm going to plug that out, and with this out, now we have the battery right here. So assuming we needed to change or replace the battery, what we will have to do is, when you look at this dark thing, this is a tape, that's a tape. So peel this off, and this tape goes all the way to the lower side of the battery. But this tape is interesting. You simply stretch out the tape and it starts shrinking and elongating, and that rips it from below the battery, and the battery will simply lift up. And therefore, since you do not have this at your disposal when you're placing the new battery, you will just employ the services of this kind of glue that we use during screen replacement to hold the battery onto the frame of the phone. That said, let's go on to tear down the phone. So the first thing is also get rid of that coaxial cable from the main motherboard. That is so that we can be able to access the lower subboard. Now, to access the lower subboard, of course, that's where your charging port is mounted, and we'll have to remove that screw. These contacts that you see here are attached to this piece of plastic. This piece of plastic also has the physical antennas, so these go into the antenna lines right here. That is also for network. The Wi-Fi antennas tend to be on the top side. I hope I will have the opportunity to show you. Now, another thing, when you're removing this board, always take keen notice that at times the board is held onto the frame by adhesive, so you will need some hot air to actually get rid of it. And let me bring my guy. Okay, so I'm set the dial to 150 degrees Celsius just because I'm a bit impatient, but ideally anything between 100 and 150 should be fine. Above that, you will simply melt the plastic on the frame of the phone. But I'm seeing the frame seems to be aluminium, so I doubt it is that much of plastic. So aluminium should survive even higher temperatures. Now I'll wait for it to pick up heat. It looks like the aluminium frame is taking it away as fast as I supply it, and therefore causing the temperature to rise very slowly. Okay, hit that some more, then get again in between with the surgical blade. Okay. We want to get in there, but also being careful to not wreak havoc. So I think patience is always something that would come in handy when you're doing this, not forgetting the application of a bit of intuition here and there. Every time you meet resistance, step back and take a second look. You never know, there's something that you haven't observed. So this right here is your lower subboard. That's the one that holds the USB Type-C. So at times you could change the whole of this if you're having charging problems, and also if your mouthpiece or microphone is not picking up sound, that's the microphone or the mouthpiece. It's also attached to the lower subboard. So swapping this solves about 3 problems at a go: the charging problem, mouthpiece problem, I mean you not being heard problem, and the network problem. So those are the 3. But then if you're good enough, this can actually also be changed. This is a surface mount microphone, and then there are 1 or 2 antennas here, and then that socket if you have to deal with the mouthpiece and antenna network problem. But of course, even the Type-C port can actually be changed individually, but it's a more complex process, so people tend to opt for changing the entire subboard. So never cry when someone tells you fixing the charging port of a Type-C phone may cost you about 60k. There's a likelihood you're being made to buy the lower subboard as a whole, and they can actually go as high as 100, so depends on whom you land on. So right now we are going to go to the front side, the upper part, the main subboard. To access it, there's that screw, that and that, and so we'll have to loosen those. The first, the second, the third. Lucky for me, this phone, unlike the iPhones, has identical screws. Had you been opening the iPhone, you would have to note where each screw came from, because they are of different pitches and different width. Okay, put it in the wrong place, wreak havoc, and that's the end of your life with the iPhone. So 2 more screws remaining. The last one. Always remember to have your screwdriver magnetized. It helps with picking out the screws. These 2 couldn't come off because some adhesive spilled over to them, and it's hard to lift out with the strength of the magnetized tape. Now I have to pick out this top plastic, so get right in there like that, in there. At times also, the secret to a proper repair is having the right tools at the right time. Allow me draw closer so I can exert some. Okay, so I had run out of storage, and let me now use the phone's internal to record. And right now we were at the point of lifting out this plastic, which we are. So lift that out. Okay, I had the screw just run, but it's just 1 screw. We'll find it. So this is the back plastic, the topmost plastic. So you will have to take note about just one thing here. This, that, and that. These are the connections to the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antennas. Some pieces of strips right in there. So those could also help solve your problem should you have Wi-Fi issues. Now we are inside the top side of the phone, and that there is your earpiece speaker. If you're listening to the person on the other end of the call, this is what processes that sound. So I'm going to lift up this motherboard. I need to examine it as to why it's simply blacked out. So this ribbon is also changeable. Should you have torn it, you will just have to pick it out from here. I'm using the surgical blade because I don't have any power flowing in this phone, but if the battery were plugged in, do not try to disconnect anything using a metallic device. You could easily short the motherboard. So having said that, now let me see if this board has any screw holding it down. Is this a screw? Okay, it is not. So I think no other screw holds this main board onto the frame. And I think I didn't mention this. This is the rear facing camera. It plugs into the motherboard, albeit from the underside. This is the front facing camera. It plugs in from right there, but I want to lift them out with the motherboard together before I attempt to unplug them. Now, to lift this from the frame, I think it's wise to begin from that side, and I'm going to pick it out from there, pull it a bit backward. Why I pull it a bit backward is because this earphone jack goes under the frame a little bit. Okay, and this is the main motherboard coming out right there. Now if you notice, they had used some thermal paste here to transplant heat from this electromagnetic shielding plate onto the metallic frame of the phone to dissipate heat, but it looks a bit dried out, and that could have caused the overheating problems and therefore the shutdown of the phone. Now on the main motherboard, of course, like we said, that's the rear mounted camera. It plugs into the motherboard from right under here. This is also sellotape, but it's of the shielding nature. It does two things, both to cover and to do electromagnetic shielding. Okay, so just that's the sockets, and get in between there. Okay. Okay, so this is a bit interesting. So for the main, okay, the back cameras, we decided to use two separate connectors, which is strange, unlike what I saw in the Huawei P9. So there's this connector for the 5 megapixel lens, and then there's this other bigger one for the main camera lens. So I just need to peel off that tape a bit. Okay, right there, right there, right there, right there. Okay, and that's how your main camera modules come out, and we can put those to the side right there. Okay, now the front facing camera is that one there, and plugs on the board from that point. To get rid of it, there's also a socket there like that comes out, and then that tape. So that is for your front facing camera. And then now your main motherboard. I think there's also something to look out for, and that is the proximity sensor. That's the component that detects that you've held the phone next to your ear and will deactivate the touch screen or black the screen such that it doesn't think you are over touching the screen. So that's the proximity sensor. It blasts, I guess, an infrared beam which gets reflected back by the receiver. At least that's my theory as to how it works. I've never really bothered to find out. I think in the next video I shall. Okay, now we are going. Okay, now that we are done with that, so we are going to examine this board to see why it blacked out.